Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into a truly rich stack of sources today, all centered around Min Jin Lee's monumental novel, Pachinko.
Yeah, it's quite a work.
It really is. And
Mm.
we're not just, skimming the lore. We're using specific excerpts, detailed reading group guides, and some really deep author commentary.
Right. To really understand the complex, relentless journey of this Korean family for generations navigating life in Japan.
From the colonial era, 1910, all the way up to, what, 1989?
That's the span. It's huge. And our core mission here, I think, is to synthesize that narrative arc, the intense character psychology.
Which is so powerful in this book.
Absolutely. And connect it with the heavy historical context that the sources provide. We want to give you a kind of shortcut.
A shortcut to understanding those key themes, right? Survival identity.
Exactly. Survival identity and the incredible psychological price paid for assimilation by the Zainichi Koreans.
And Zainichi, just to be clear for everyone, that's the term for Korean residents in Japan, often people who settled there, sometimes involuntarily, after the annexation.
Precisely. People caught between worlds.
And the scope, well, it really demands this deep dive. We're following the family from their start in 1910 Korea, the Gohyang, the hometown, through the just grinding hardships of the diaspora in Osaka, which, I mean, they often bitterly called the motherland.
Yeah, the irony is thick there.
Totally.
Yeah.
And we end up with the third, even fourth generation, still struggling for acceptance, decades later in the late 1980s.
It's a story where the cost of just existing really is measured in generational trauma. It's heavy stuff.
It is. So let's start at the beginning. Section 1, establishing the family in Gohyang, 1910 to 1933.
Okay.
The story kicks off immediately by showing us Sunja's father, Hooni.
Okay.
And he's immediately presented as vulnerable.
Yeah, the sources are very specific. He's born with physical disadvantages, a severe foot deformity, so he's described as crippled, couldn't walk or run quickly.
And the broken lip, the cleft lip.
Right. Which immediately places him and, by extension, the family sort of on the fringes, because traditional survival physical labor, that's just not an option for him.
So what I found really fascinating in the sources was how his parents dealt with that.
What they did.
They knew he couldn't rely on, well, brute strength, especially as things were getting worse under colonial rule. So they came up with this, strategic defense through education.
That's it. His father insisted Hooni learn to read and write, both Korean and Japanese, and master the boarding house ledger, do complex math in his head.
And this wasn't just, for the love of learning, was it?
No, absolutely not. It was purely tactical.
Yeah, the author commentary stresses this was so he couldn't be cheated at the market. That's the direct quote.
It is. They raised him to be clever, diligent, a master of, intellectual labor, specifically because they worried. Who would care for him when they were gone?
It's like a preemptive move against being abandoned and exploited.
Exactly. And it sets the tone for the entire book, doesn't it? Survival requires this relentless, focused diligence, especially if you're vulnerable.
So after his parents pass, Hooni marries Yangjin. A quiet marriage, the sources say.
Quiet. And then we're plunged straight into this immense tragedy for her early life.
It's brutal, losing her first 3 babies, one with a cleft palate, like Hooni.
Another to fever and diarrhea before the important Bakel, the 100-day celebration.
And a third to smallpox. I mean, the level of loss is just staggering before Sunja, their only girl, finally thrives.
It is. And in that tragedy, we see this profound, really understated devotion in their relationship. It's such a contrast to the chaos later in Sunja's life.
How so?
Well, after each death, there were rituals, of course. But it was Hooni's personal response that stands out in the source material.
Ah, the rice cakes.
Yes. He'd always bring Yangjin sweet rice cakes still warm from the market, and he'd insist, you have to eat. You must get your strength.
It's that quiet, diligent support again that defines their bond. And it gives Sunja her earliest model of, well, secure love, I suppose.
Definitely. But this love, it existed within what the sources call an economy of survival, constantly on the edge.
Right. The boarding house itself was tiny, built on a rented plot. They even had to push the kitchen out into the garden just to fit the big cooking pots for the lodgers.
The poverty, the structural poverty is just undeniable. And the sources emphasize this constant financial hardship. Lodgers, often poor students or workers, couldn't always pay in yen.
So they paid in goods, like cooking oil.
Exactly, unsold goods. So Youngjin's anxiety, it gets channeled into this incredibly careful financial management. dropping leftover coins, the tiny margins, into a dark earthenware crock.
That careful, almost fearful saving. It speaks volumes, doesn't it? They're always just one illness, one bad debt away from total disaster.
That's the generational concern right there. And the societal backdrop is critical, too, for understanding the limits put on Sunja later.
Yangjin's mother-in-law passes down this truth. It pretty much frames the whole gender dynamic of the novel.
What was it? Men have choices.
Men have choices that women don't. It's like a law, not advice.
It really is the operating philosophy for women in that time and place, and it sets the stage perfectly for Mrs. June.
Ah, yes, Mrs. June, who basically formalizes this idea for young Sunja, preparing her for what's coming.
Her advice is chilling. A woman's life is endless work and suffering. There is suffering and then more suffering. It's better to expect it, you know?
That's the philosophy of Goseng, isn't it? This willingness to endure hardship, humiliation even.
Exactly. And we should spend a moment on Goseng because it's not just passive suffering, is it? It's not just letting things happen to you.
No, it feels more active than that.
It is. The author commentary confirms Goseng is active suffering. It's self-sacrifice, endured for the welfare of others, usually your family, and accepting that humiliation might just be part of the job description for a woman.
And the expectation tied to this is so stark. The man you marry will determine the quality of your life completely.
Right. So if your life is basically predetermined to be endless work and suffering, your only real agency lies in who you tie yourself to.
But that pressure, it doesn't just frame Sunja's life. It feels like it directly leads to some of the, well, catastrophic choices she makes later.
It absolutely does, because if you need a man to define your life's quality and you know life is suffering, then the man offering the most security.
Regardless of his morals.
Precisely. He becomes the most attractive option. For survival, that link is just vital to understanding her choices.
Okay, let's move into section 2, Sunja's reckoning. The price of, as the outline says, unconventional beauty.
Right, and the descriptions of her in the sources are really specific. She's not classically beautiful, not delicate.
No, she has a short, wide frame. It's thick, built for hard work, described as more handsome than pretty.
And she's noticed more for her quick energy and bright manner.
And her hands. That detail is important, isn't it?
Very. Her young hands, the sources specify, showed work. They weren't the soft, knowing hands of a tea-house girl.
It establishes her class, her character. She's respectable, industrious, not relying on charm. She embodies that diligence her father taught her.
Exactly. Which makes what happens at the ferry so much worse.
Truly horrifying. She's just doing her duty, carrying groceries, yellow melons, oxtails, essential stuff, and these 3 Japanese high school students target her.
They physically harass her, steal her food.
And the insults. Calling her a smelly slut, a stupid bitch. In Japanese.
It's more than just random bullying, though. It's a clear enactment of the colonial power dynamic.
They felt entitled, knew they could get away with it.
Right. But the bigger trauma, I think, as you pointed out, is the complete indifference of everyone else around.
Zero intervention. The sources are brutal. The Ajumas, the older women, the boatmen. Nobody steps in.
They were occupied with work, or maybe just scared, unwilling to risk confronting the Japanese boys.
So Sunja is left completely vulnerable, terrified she'd be dragged somewhere and lost. It's the moment her faith in society, in protection, just shatters.
And right into that void steps Kohansu.
The ultimate contrast to the quiet, hard-working men she's known, like her father.
Absolutely. He's presented as powerful, confident, impeccably dressed, has a business network apparently, even a distinct Jeju accent.
And crucially, the sources note he'd been watching her, observing her shopping habits daily. He already knew her routine, her vulnerability.
Which makes his rescue both impressive and a little chilling.
It's definitive, isn't it? And terrifying. He makes the boys apologize in Japanese, reinforcing his power in their language. Jokes about throwing them in the sea.
It's immediate, overwhelming, effective power. The kind of security that no poor, diligent Korean man like Huni could ever offer her.
It's the instant solution to her biggest fear, that vulnerability she just experienced.
And that display of force leads directly to the secret romance, the meetings at the secluded cove.
Initially, she saw him innocently, didn't she? Like a friend, her elder brother.
Yeah, that's what the text says. He showed these little flickers of vulnerability, like crying in the forest once. But also possessiveness, touching the nape of her neck. It's safety mixed with, well, excitement, danger almost.
But the safety is the ultimate illusion. The floor just drops out after she tells him she's pregnant.
That's the devastating revelation. Hansu casually drops that he's married, with a wife and 3 daughters in Japan.
Identifying him instantly as a jebi.
A jebi, yeah. A man who flits from woman to woman, but the sources tell us Sunja was completely blindsided.
She notes nothing about him had ever made her suspect that he was a jebi.
He'd seemed so straightforward, kept his promises. It proves that painful truth. Hansu's power, his decisiveness, had absolutely nothing to do with his morality.
And the critique here is key. He offers to provide financially for her, for the child. But he can't offer legitimacy. He can't offer public acknowledgement.
No, he offers survival, basically, in exchange for shame.
And that shame, born from her desperation and his deception, becomes this foundational burden she carries into the next generation, really.
It shapes everything that follows.
Which brings us to Section 3, duty, sacrifice, and the move to Japan.
Right. The fallout from Hansu and the shame. It leads directly to the arrival of Baek Isik, Sunja's adoptive father.
He's introduced as a minister from Pyongyang, looking for his brother Yoseb, and he's the total opposite of Hansu, physically at least.
Frail, yeah. Suffering from severe tuberculosis, the same illness that killed Huni, which is a significant connection.
That shared history of illness, of loss.
Yeah.
It connects him deeply to Yang Jin, doesn't it? She nurses him back to health.
She does. Feeling indebted, the sources say, because he was a young man who deserved to live.
And Isik's motivation for marrying Sunja? It's not romantic at all. It's radical, purely theological almost.
That's crucial for understanding him. He saw the child not as a burden, not as a sin, but as a gift from God.
So his proposal is to marry Sunja simply to save her from the societal disgrace of having a child out of wedlock.
Knowing he himself has lifelong poor health, wasn't expected to live past 25, had refused marriage before, it's an act of pure, almost reckless duty.
So the narrative shifts here, right?
Yeah.
From survival through strength, like Hansu offered.
To survival through this radical, selfless duty. That's Isik.
But this duty, it gets questioned immediately, even by his own colleagues.
When he announces it to the church, the elder minister, Pastor Shin, he puts Sunja through this harsh moralistic interrogation.
Pastor Shin challenges Isik too, doesn't he? Calling Sunja's actions a sin, questioning if Isik is trying to be a martyr or prophet.
He does. You almost wonder reading it, was Isik truly selfless? Or was he maybe fulfilling some spiritual need to be righteous? Pastor Shin definitely saw it as spiritual recklessness.
But Shin's motivation runs deeper than just moral judgment, you argue. It's political survival for the whole community.
Absolutely. He demands perfection from Sunja. He warns her. Every Korean must be on his best behavior over there, meaning Japan. One bad Korean ruins it for thousands of others.
That's such critical context for listeners. They're moving to a place where the Zainichi are already seen as, well, less than human.
Exactly. So if one Korean woman is seen as morally compromised, it reflects badly on everyone under the watchful, bigoted eye of the Japanese majority.
The pressure to conform, to be flawless, it starts before they even leave Busan. It turns her personal shame into a communal burden.
It does. And the departure itself, the logistics, are just heartbreaking. Framed by Yang Jin's final acts of devotion.
Struggling just to buy the white rice for the wedding dinner, having to pay the higher Japanese price because she's Korean.
And then, facing her own duty, she has to stay behind to care for the graves of her in-laws, of Huni. She can't leave his memory. It's this profound, silent sacrifice.
And her final advice to Sunja. It's harsh, but it has to be permanent, doesn't it?
Your home is with your husband. Never come home again. Make a good home for him and your child. That's your job. They must not suffer.
It's not just advice. It's a command, a decree of permanent, intentional exile. Survival of the new family unit now overrides any tie to the Goyang.
Everything is sacrificed for that. The only hopeful note comes from Isik, actually.
All right, he's excited about Osaka. Sees it as this huge place where they'll be anonymous.
He tells Sunja they'd rarely see the same person twice. He sees anonymity as freedom. The reality, of course,
proves very different.
Yeah.
Which takes us into Section 4, Life in Ikaino. War, work, generational identity, roughly 1939 to 1962.
Okay. And the reality of the diaspora hits Sunja immediately, jarringly.
She sees the Osaka train station, this stone and concrete behemoth, the smart shops downtown. But she also notices something new.
What's that?
Very poor-looking people, and must have been Japanese. That was something she had never seen in Busan. Poverty crossing ethnic lines, but the specific Korean hardship, that's still coming.
And comes when they reach the Ikaino ghetto. That district is such a crucial, defining place in the novel.
Described as vastly different from downtown, characterized by an animal stench. The houses are mismatched, shabby, built with cheap or found materials, like huts or tents.
This is the living reality of the motherland for the Zainichi. Yoseb, Isik's brother, sums it up with that grim joke.
This place is fit for only pigs and Koreans.
Yeah.
Brutal.
It is, and Yoseb is their initial anchor for survival. The hardworking Korean foreman. But the systemic discrimination is right there.
Even working 2 full-time jobs, he earns half the salary of a Japanese foreman doing the same work.
Constantly repairing machines after hours, perpetually worried about money, about dying and leaving his family unprotected.
That financial reality just underscores the deep structural bias, doesn't it? Doesn't matter how hard you work, your Korean identity caps your potential.
It absolutely does. And that instability leads directly to the women stepping up, showing incredible resilience, especially after Isik is arrested.
We should detail that arrest.
Yeah.
He was jailed for refusing to bow at Shinto shrines. And it wasn't police enforcing it, but volunteer community leaders.
Right. It was a mandatory assimilation requirement by the state, meant to cement Japanese national identity. Refusing to bow wasn't just religious objection, it was rejecting state authority, resisting forced spiritual submission.
So it was seen as deeply subversive.
Extremely. Yosef, terrified for Isik's life because of his TB, had to literally beg the police for his release, humiliating himself just to save his brother.
So with the men compromised, Yosef earning half, Isik jailed the women, become the economic engine.
Sunja has to overcome this severe mortification, step out into the market, and start shouting, "Kimchi! Delicious kimchi!"
Its simple act of selling, conquering her shame. The sources say it gave her a real sense of strength, pride even.
And the adaptation skills are incredible. When wartime scarcity made traditional ingredients rare, Kyungi adapted.
Pickling radishes, cucumbers,
Yeah.
even carrot or eggplant pickles, because the Japanese preferred those kinds.
Their survival depended on keeping their Korean industry alive while meticulously catering to Japanese tastes, which led them to working for Kim Chong-ho, making banchan side dishes.
And Sunja always prioritized Noa, didn't she? Making sure she could leave work when he got home from school. His stability, his education was paramount.
Always. But the war years also bring Hansu back into the picture. Cynically.
He never really left their orbit, did he?
Not really. In 1944, he shows up at the restaurant with this crucial, terrifying warning.
Osaka, being made of wood and paper, was about to be bombed by B-29s. He tells them to leave for the kids' sake.
Now, the sources frame this as protection. Hansu, the JB, the likely Yakuza associate, warning them. But isn't it also a way for him to exert control, to keep them indebted?
That's the critique, right? It's a classic example of what the outline called cynical provision.
He uses his network, which involves Tamaguchi, running a black market through Hansu to get Sunja, Kyungi, and the boys out, to safety on a sweet potato farm outside Osaka.
He ensures their physical survival, using his crooked life, his black market power. It's protection, yes, but it ties Sunja even tighter to his moral compromise.
Absolutely. And how did Noa, the product of that original compromise, fare during this time?
He was brilliant. Excellent student math, writing, but deeply isolated.
And his teacher just reinforces his subordinate status, telling him to work hard to improve his illiterate race.
Just awful. That's where the seeds of his identity crisis are really sown, isn't it? The systematic dehumanization starts right there in the classroom.
It does. But maybe the most heartbreaking moment is Isik's final blessing, before he dies from the illness worsened by jail time and his generally poor health.
He tells Noa, "You're very brave, Noa. Living every day in the presence of those who refuse to acknowledge your humanity takes great courage."
What incredible weight to place on a child. It validates his suffering, yes, but it also confirms his permanent subhuman status in Japan. That defines his inner world.
It does. And the sources reveal Noa harbored this secret hope.
That if they could just return to Korea, he would be normal.
For Noa, being Korean meant a life free from judgment, a possibility of normalcy that Japan constantly denied him.
That hope becomes central to his later breakdown.
Which brings us to Section 5, the weight of blood and shame, roughly 1965 to 1979.
Okay, so Noah's older now, trying to get into Waseda University, the ultimate path to acceptance, academically and socially.
But the family's financial struggles and the moral conflicts around money resurface intensely with Yoseb. He's sick, dying now, and adamant Sunja cannot take Hansu's money for Noah's tutoring and tuition.
This is the core moral debate of this section. Yoseb draws this hard line, he says. Borrowing from Goro-san and hurting Mozasu's future in Pachinko is far better than taking money from Kohansu. He wants to control the boy.
He sees Hansu's money as fundamentally toxic,
No.
not just tainted, but poisonous.
Right. But Kungi offers that crucial counterpoint. She asks Yoseb, essentially, why is Goro's pachinko money cleaner than Hansu's money from construction or restaurants?
She gets it, doesn't she? In the Zainichi world, the whole economy is operating in shades of gray. Morality is a luxury they just can't afford.
Exactly. Pachinko might be morally ambiguous, but it's their industry. The one sector often open to Koreans when others were closed.
This debate highlights how Zainichi survival is intrinsically linked to these gray area industries, the ones the Japanese majority look down on.
And the ultimate price of Hansu's provision, it turns out, is psychological. And Noah's the one who pays it when he finally learns the truth about Hansu being his biological father and funding his education.
That revelation just precipitates a total identity crisis and his disappearance.
He declares to Sunja, "My blood father is Ko Hansu. That cannot change. I suppose having Yakuza in your blood is something that controls you. I can never be clean of him." He rejects his heritage completely, calls it a curse.
We need to really unpack that. He doesn't just reject Hansu, the man. He accepts the internalized Japanese prejudice.
He does. That he's inherently tainted. That the Yakuza blood is a biological curse he can't escape. His rejection of his Korean identity is, tragically, the final successful stage of assimilation.
He's accepted the majority's judgment of his race as fundamentally flawed.
And so he withdraws from Waseda, disappears, chooses self-exile and shame over accepting Hansu's help or his own heritage.
Meanwhile, his younger brother, Mozasu, takes a completely different path. More pragmatic, accepting their reality.
Yeah. Mozasu quit school earlier, went to work for Goro-san, the pachinko parlor manager. He's more physical, fought bullies. He chooses the path of gaining control within the economic sector available to them. He plans to open his own parlor.
And Mozasu's acceptance of their situation is profound and also heartbreaking. He notes how Korean Japanese are called Japanese bastards in Seoul.
And dirty Korean in Japan. There's literally no place to go. He resigns himself to the fact that they have no motherland.
The pachinko parlor, ironically, becomes their stable ground, their territory, in a way.
It does, and this feeling of statelessness, it's institutionalized, isn't it, by the Japanese government's alien registration process.
Which Mozasu bitterly calls their dog tags.
The sources really convey the physical, dehumanizing reality of it. Solomon, Mozasu's son, has to report at 14 for registration, mandatory fingerprinting, every 3 years just to stay in Japan.
The clerk dipping this kid's phone number into thick black ink, treating him like a criminal.
And Mozasu just watches his son go through it, lamenting, "It is hopeless. I cannot change his fate. He is Korean. He has to get those papers. Follow all the steps of the law perfectly."
That bureaucracy itself is a constant reminder of their precarious status.
Yeah.
They have to be perfect because they're perpetually outsiders. Their lives are conditional.
Not entirely conditional, which leads us into the final sections, the later years. Section 6, Intergenerational Trauma, Pachinko, and the Unresolved Curse, 1979 to 1989.
Right. We start with the death of Sunja's mother, Yang Jin, from stomach cancer. And she reflects on her life through that lens of Gosei.
Accepting Mrs. Jin's philosophy, a woman's lot is to suffer.
But Sunja, the survivor, has such a powerful negative reaction to that word now. She hates Gosei.
Yeah, she realizes maybe she failed Noah, not just by failing to protect him from suffering, but by failing to teach him how to suffer the humiliation that she drunk like water.
Sunja accepted humiliation as necessary for survival. Noah saw it as a reason to erase himself. That's a huge difference.
It is. And then there's that shocking revelation Yang Jin makes on her deathbed about Kim Chung-ho and Kyung-gi.
I found this absolutely stunning. She reveals Shang-ho went back to Korea because he loved Kyung-gi. But Yoseb, before he died, had actually offered Kyung-gi to him.
That decision by Yoseb, it's one of the most profound acts of duty in the book, I think. He knew he was dying. He didn't want Twingi, who was like family, to be left alone, destitute in Japan after he was gone.
It shows the hidden, devastating compromises made out of love, out of duty. Almost incomprehensible from a modern perspective.
Completely. And this theme of duty, trauma, it's everywhere, even mirrored in the Japanese mainstream, grimly.
Through Mosasu's friend, Haruki Toroyama, the detective, investigated the suicide of a Korean middle school student, Tetsuo.
Jumped off a building. And the cause. It's the exact same bigotry that drove Noah away.
Tetsuo's yearbook, defaced with horrific messages. Die, you ugly Korean. Koreans are troublemakers and pigs. Get the hell out. This is the daily pressures the Zainichi kids faced.
And Haruki, who is Korean himself but successfully integrated into the police force, he's profoundly affected.
He confesses he thought about hanging himself as a kid. He understood perfectly that the poor kid couldn't take any more.
That sequence is vital. It shows that even achieving success within Japanese society doesn't erase the psychological burden, doesn't erase the threat of humiliation.
It confirms that the curse Noa felt was real, pervasive.
Which brings us, finally, painfully, to the last glimpse of Noa in 1989.
Revealed by Hansu, of course, who never stopped watching.
Never. He tells Sunja where Noa is, living in Nagano for 16 years, under a new name, Nobuo Ban. Married to a Japanese woman, Risa, 4 kids, successfully passing as pure Japanese.
The irony is just devastating. Sunja finds him, and what's he doing? He's a high-level manager, precise, honest.
In the Pachinko business, the very industry his brother Mozasu embraced openly, Noa took the Zainichi path to success, but under a completely false identity.
The reunion is just unbearable, isn't it?
Crushing. Noah's shame, rooted in that Hansu revelation decades ago, it's still his driving force. He refuses his past, tells Sunja, I understand what you did, however, my blood father is Kohansu. That cannot change. I can never be clean of him.
Still sees his life controlled by the Yakuza in your blood, his curse. He chose self-erasure as the only way he could find dignity, rejecting the core identity his mother suffered endlessly to preserve.
Traded his truth for acceptability.
And the story ends with Sunja reflecting at Isak's grave, 1989.
Yeah, and the groundskeeper, who has no idea about the family drama, mentions that Nobuo Ban is a very kind man, and he's still waiting to tell him he loved Dickens' David Copperfield.
That small detail. It confirms Noah's success at passing, but just underscores the profound loneliness of the path he chose.
It does. And in that final reflection, Sunja finds a kind of grace, doesn't she?
Yeah. She realizes it wasn't Hansu or Isak she missed most, but her youth, her own wishes. She finds value in the mundane, acknowledging that beyond the dailiness, there had been moments of shimmering beauty and some glory too, even in this Ajuma's life.
She finds redemption not in her children's fates, but in the simple dignity of her own endured existence. Her go-sang transformed, maybe?
Maybe. Okay, let's try to synthesize this in the outro.
Right. If we pull all these sources together, what really stands out is just the sheer weight of those contradictory moral choices needed for survival.
Isak's radical duty.
Hansu's cynical provision.
Sunja's unending work, defined by Gosang.
Yeah. And this deep dive really revealed the brutal economic and psychological realities of life in those Zainichi ghettos like Ikaino, and that overwhelming pressure to assimilate.
Which ultimately led to the self-erasure of the brilliant but tormented Noa.
And here's where it gets really interesting, connecting to the title. The author specifically uses the game of Pachinko itself as a core metaphor.
Right, for the history of Koreans in Japan. Explain that a bit.
Well, think about it. A people caught in these seemingly random global conflicts, colonialism, war, shifting politics, like the steel balls just bouncing randomly through the pins in a pachinko machine.
Winning or losing based on forces totally outside their control.
Exactly. Bureaucracy, prejudice. They're constantly struggling for their place, their fate dictated by this mix of random chance and sometimes calculated leverage.
But the randomness of the game reflects the randomness of their fate, you're saying?
It does, but also their ability to operate and manage the parlors, that reflects their strategic resilience within that very restricted, often prejudiced environment.
That blend of randomness and strategy and the morality tied to it, that feels key to the author's main theme. Fairness, sympathy.
Yeah, she stated she aimed to recognize that even the most unsympathetic character, maybe like Hansu, has a moral clarity to his actions, given the limited, often terrible choices available to them.
And that's what we're left thinking about, isn't it? When we look at Hansu using crime to provide security, or Noa choosing self-erasure, actions that cause so much pain, where do we, the readers, draw the line?
It's complex because their actions had consequences, huge ones.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider. What does it actually mean to recognize the moral clarity in actions driven purely by survival?
If dignity, if self-determination are basically impossible within the system they faced, does the ultimate moral choice just become existence, simple survival?
No matter the cost to identity. And maybe thinking about our own lives. What costs are we willing to bear to secure our own dignity when the world seems stacked against us?
Heavy questions to end on, but that's what great literature does, right?
It absolutely does.